Good afternoon. I'm Todd Sievert. I'm chairman of the Personnel Committee. To my left is Tom Kendall. To my right is Bill Twist. Today on the agenda, we're going to talk about the appointing of the Director of Public Service and Safety and the City Auditor to the Board of Directors for the Troy Reinvestment Fund. At this stage, we'll turn it over to Patrick for some more information about this, and then I think we'll have some discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Troy Reinvestment Fund is what they would formally name what we've been kind of calling the core group, community reinvestment. It's a concept that several cities in Ohio have been using, particularly to reinvest in their downtowns, Hamilton, Springfield, some central and northeastern Ohio cities, communities as well. So they're in an initial process of filing for nonprofit status. And I guess I talked too long.
Time's up.
So the primary purpose of this particular group would be to facilitate, as I mentioned, the reinvestment primarily in the downtown, but it as a secondary purpose could have community-wide application. It would be to provide many of the benefits that we as a city offer through our revolving loan funds, but with far fewer strings attached, because it would be a separate nonprofit organization. The incorporators have recommended as part of their articles of incorporation that the auditor and the service and safety director be standing members of the board of directors for this community group, which we recommend. I know if I believe you've talked to Mr. Frigge, he recommends it as well. Because it is our downtown, because it is, we of course are vitally interested in the continued rehab and reinvestment and improvement in the property values of our downtown area, that we recommend that council appoints those two positions. And the reason it's naming the positions is our successors then would automatically be part of that board without having to revisit this issue.
Do we know who the incorporators are?
Let's see, Mike Twist, Mike Earhart, and Doug Linz are the three incorporators. And they have received their state approvals, which I believe is an EIN, and they are in the process of filing with the IRS for their 501c3 status.
Okay. How big is this committee going to be? The five of you then?
Initially it'll be five. The guidelines, the code of regulations allow for between 5 and 9. And so as the portfolio grows, as the project list grows, I'm sure that we would continue to expand, because we do want to have community involvement and stakeholder involvement as the projects get bigger and more prolific.
Okay.
So would the theory behind this be then to supplement the revolving loan fund, or would it be in lieu of the revolving loan fund?
It could be either. It definitely would be a supplement to and an additional economic development tool. It would probably allow more flexibility. It would probably allow for less red tape. I mean, a lot less red tape, and we would hope it would facilitate quicker projects, quicker turnaround, quicker growth in the fund. At what point our funds would start to fall back and that become the primary fund just depends on the workload, the project list, the viability of the nonprofit in the long run.
Okay, so we're, and I know we put it in the budget, which was fine, the $500,000, right, for our portion, and then the Troy Foundation was going to put in $1 million.
So it's really kind of a two-part question. Starting with the Troy Foundation, they did file an application with the foundation. Those funds are being held pending the approval by the IRS of the 501c3. Once that happens, then those funds would be released, and that would be the seed money for the TRF. At that point, then what we expect, although it hasn't been finalized yet, is that there would be a challenge to other donors that their $1 million would stimulate other donations towards contributions towards that fund, which could include the city's up to $500,000. The $500,000 has really nothing to do with the appointment of these two positions. That is not any kind of decision that the council has made yet. That would not be any kind of discussion unless you wanted to have discussion earlier, but it'd probably be premature to have that discussion after and assuming that the IRS approves the 501c3,
Right.
at which point the members of the ATP, the Activate Troy Partnership, would want to make a presentation to the council as to why this is a legitimate and reasonable and most logical way to spend that money.
Okay,
So just because it's in the budget does not mean it's been approved, as you know.
because I have no problem with going ahead and appointing, yourself and Mr. Frigge to the board of those positions in our city to the board, but I would definitely want to have the opportunity again to discuss when and if the 500,000 becomes something that we need to be looking at.
Right.
So.
And there are many things that need to be discussed. What are the objectives that we want? What are the pros of us being involved in this? In what form do we want to give this money? Do we want to give it all at once, or in increments? And are there other conditions that the council might want to see as part of that contribution?
Yeah.
Or contributions?
Well, personally, I'm all in favor of development, but we need to be somewhat cautious with that volume of funding. So
That's a large amount.
yeah,
The objective is to put city positions on the board to have a say within this nonprofit group.
It is
And be
our
able to have
downtown,
some,
it is our
right.
community. Certainly, I would expect, I don't want to speak on behalf of Mr. Frigge, but from my standpoint, I think Mr. Frigge and I would owe you periodic updates
Right.
on where we're at, much as Mrs. Baker has asked council liaisons to various committees and groups to do the same.
Yep.
most definitely, yeah.
Any other questions from the committee?
No.
Anything from council? Mr. Lutz?
A couple questions. Do the bylaws or the code of regulations have any stipulations on the other members? Must they be city residents? Do they, how are those individuals chosen, those types of things?
I'm not aware of anything specific, but that would be something that the board of directors could and probably should take up
Okay.
in determining who else might want to be on the board.
My second question is, I know we have a community improvement corporation, and what's the fundamental difference between what we're creating here and the CIC?
The CIC is not a revolving loan fund. The CIC is an economic development corporation that is kind of an arm of the city. It can hold property, it can get into contracts, it can do certain things on our behalf. One of those could be a revolving loan fund type instrument, but since we already have those that are city specific, using the CIC doesn't really gain the same benefits as having a private or a separate nonprofit doing that.
So what are the benefits of having a new group do these types of RLF activities if the CIC could already do them?
Well, while we avoid certain requirements using the CIC, we still have certain bureaucratic filings, certain paperwork that we would have to file. I can't really get that specific with you on that, and not because I'm trying to be secretive, but I'd want to do some research, but that'd be certainly a conversation
Well, because
as
okay.
part of the next step, whenever that
Because I mean,
discussion
you'd still have to file a 990 regardless of what entity would do it, and there's still bureaucratic items on both sides regardless of what entity's doing the work. Would CIC work fall under prevailing wage laws?
It typically does not, but
Okay.
again, whether there, I would think the answer is no,
Okay.
to be consistent, but I'd want to ask the law director to look at that if that were the route. The other concern with the CIC is that, that is a city entity, and whether or not other contributors would want to contribute to a CIC as opposed to a completely, or mostly independent nonprofit, separate nonprofit, community-based, would be a question that I think the ATP and the incorporators could answer at that time.
Is the CIC a 501c3 now, or is it a C4 or a
It's
C6?
a nonprofit, I'm not sure what number.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Lewis?
No, thank you.
Anybody else from council have any comments? Madam President? Mayor? Grant, is that Grant behind? Grant, any comments? No. Okay. Seeing no further comments on this issue, I'll turn to my right, Mr. Twist,
I'd move forward with adding those two positions.
and to my left, Mr. Kendall.
Yeah, I'm in favor of going forward with the positions. However, once we start talking money, I guess I'll reach out to you, Mr. Titterington, and say, I feel you need to really have your ducks in order when you come to us for that. So
Duly noted.
I have spoken on this issue with both Mr. Frigge, as alluded to by the Safety Service Director, as well as the Safety Service Director. I concur with Mr. Kendall's comments. At this stage, there's no reason to not be part of the process, but I do think that part of the process involves a stringent eye towards city involvement in how we go further from here. But it's worth a shot at this stage, so let's see how it goes. So I would say that we move forward. It looks like you are considering emergency legislation, is that correct?
We are, because we want to get the filing in as quickly as possible.
And this,
There is a delay, there's several weeks, if not months delay.
Sure, so just so everybody's clear, this isn't any funding, this isn't any money being spent. The purpose of today is that we're going to move forward that on the Troy Reinvestment Fund, I guess LLC or Corp or whatever they're going to call themselves, we're going to agree that we will have 2 members serve on the board, and those will be in perpetuity as long as it exists, and that will be the Safety Service Director and the auditor for the city.
Correct.
Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Yeah, I think we move forward on that then.
yeah, with emergency.
With emergency. You good with emergency,
Yep.
Bill?
It's fine.
Okay, we'll call the meeting closed.